"One who walks alone is the one who travels farthest." That sentence echoed in his mind in the dying twilight, when the city behind him slowly receded, and only a lonely road stretched endlessly ahead. The ground was parched, and wind stirred dust, as though memories were being erased. There was no calling, no companion, only the sound of footsteps merging with his heartbeat. Slow, deep, silent. Everything he thought belonged to him had departed. Work, friends, lover, even the old faith that life must follow a pattern. It all collapsed so fast he could not hold on, as if the universe pressed a switch to turn off everything, forcing him to face the rawest truth: loneliness. At first it was a silent pain, spreading through his chest. He wanted to escape it, to reclaim the sounds, the lights, the laughter of people. But somehow, whenever he tried to slip into a crowd, his heart constricted, as if something whispered, "Don't run, stay." So he returned to the small room. The yellow lamp glowed faintly. The walls were cold. His own breathing grew heavy like the night wind outside. He sat still, staring into the darkness before him. All memories rushed back. Mistakes, loss, shame, prayers unanswered. And in that chaos, a voice rose from deep within, gentle but clear. God is close to the brokenhearted. Psalm 34-18. He closed his eyes. That voice felt like warm water flowing through his chest. Perhaps loneliness was not punishment. Perhaps it was an invitation, a small door leading deeper into himself. That night he sat for a long time. He no longer begged, no longer complained. He simply listened. And for the first time in that stillness, he heard what people in noise never hear: the voice of his own soul. It did not speak words, but through sensation, a subtle force spinning in his chest, like light carving a path through darkness. Everything slowed. The ticking clock, his breathing, his heartbeat all merged. He realized there was something beyond reason, the observing awareness. An inner eye began to open, seeing himself in silence. Time passed, and fear faded. The terrifying emptiness at first gradually became a space for him to hear, to understand, to see. He began to sense little fragments of energy in the room. Rain tapping outside the window, his steady breath, the touch of his hand against the cold wooden floor. Everything suddenly had a soul. Then, unexpectedly, a memory came back. As a child, he believed an angel walked beside him. He used to talk to emptiness and felt light. But growing up, that belief was called naive, illusion. He learned to laugh when others laughed, be silent when they were silent, and forgot he ever knew how to listen to silence. Now, in this solitary night that returned, not his imagination, but awareness, he began to feel a presence unseen, yet real. Not someone speaking, but life speaking through everything around him. He whispered, "If this is you, I hear." A strange warmth ran down his spine, giving him a shiver. There was no reply, but he felt seen, heard, known. A sensation he had never touched in his life before. Now loneliness was no longer darkness waiting to swallow, but sacred ground where the soul is reborn. He understood. While the world seeks noise, the chosen seek stillness. While the world flees fear, the chosen step into it, knowing that behind fear lies the light, waiting to break through. He began to write in his notebook. Maybe I am not abandoned. Maybe I have been called here to learn to become different. Below, he added, the chosen is not born in light, but forged in silence. Outside, the wind blew stronger, carrying the damp scent of earth after rain. Gray clouds drifted slowly, revealing a pale violet sky. He raised his head and saw a single ray of light piercing the clouds. It was not brilliant, but steadfast. Like himself, fragile, weary, yet still standing, unbowed. In that faint light, something quietly appeared. A number. He blinked. 111. 3 repeating digits. Delicate, like an engraving of fate. He could not say why he saw it, only that his heart warmed as if someone had touched him from within. That feeling was strange. Not fear, not astonishment, but certainty. This was a signal, a reminder from beyond the material world. He opened his notebook and wrote the final line. 111. The gate is opening. A new beginning. A soul called to awaken. He closed his eyes and inhaled deeply. In the stillness, all worldly sounds seemed to dissolve. No clock, no breath, only thin light flowing around him like water. And in that light, he heard a voice not from outside, but from within his heart. "You have lost everything to find me." He wept without knowing why. Not from pain, but from seeing something deeper than faith, a living truth. Morning came slowly. The sunlight touched floating dust, and the room glowed as if cleansed. He opened the door and breathed in deeply. The morning air carried the scent of new beginnings. Everything remained the same, yet the feeling was different. Lighter, deeper, more real. He stepped out, carrying silence in his heart. Now he understood. The journey of the chosen does not begin with the trumpet of victory, but with the moment of accepting to walk alone. And in that acceptance, something strange happened. Fear dissolved. In its place came a peaceful strength, like water reflecting the sky. He felt he had lost the world, and yet touched infinity. He no longer wanted to return. For once the soul had heard the call of God, no other path could satisfy it. In the distance, the sun broke through heavy clouds, casting light on the winding dirt road ahead. He walked forward, not hurried, not afraid, with no sense of destination. Each step was an answer, every breath a prayer. Above, the light turned golden. A soft breeze passed by, like an invisible whisper. "Keep going. I am there." He smiled. The journey had begun not outside, but within. And somewhere beyond, in the vast light, other souls too were hearing the same call, the chosen ones, learning to pass through darkness to rediscover themselves. Because deep within, they all knew, no one is ever truly alone on the path made for the called. The fragile morning light streamed through the window, resting on his shoulders like a new greeting. The dirt road, wet from last night's rain, gleamed under the Sunday. The scent of earth and grass mingled, simple and true. He walked on, without hurry, without thinking, letting each step guide him. Something was shifting not outside, but in the very beat of his heart. Everything familiar seemed peeled away, layer by layer, to reveal something deeper, more still. In the days that followed, he walked and walked. No destination, no map, only the wind and his breath as companions. The outer world remained noisy, but now he no longer needed it to confirm he was alive. Each afternoon, he paused beside a small river. He watched the water stain with the sunlight and heard the ripples like the universe breathing. In that stillness, he recognized something he had never seen before. Loneliness was forging him into someone new. He started to feel himself like a bar of steel in the furnace, heated, bent. But instead of melting, he hardened, shone, and slowly took shape. Every painful memory, every betrayal, every sleepless night all became hammer blows of destiny, refining him into something more durable than emotion. He no longer asked, "Why is this happening?" but said to himself, "What is this teaching me?" At night, by a small campfire, he watched the flames sway like the gaze of God watching over him. Sometimes the wind would rise, the flame extinguished, darkness would press in thick. In that moment, he heard his heart beat clearly, strong and steady, as though marking the rhythm of an ancient song. Then from the depths, the invisible voice rose again, low and warm like the breath of earth. "Be still and know that I am God." Psalm 46:10. He nodded gently, gratitude rising within him in silence. In the loneliest hours, he felt his presence more clearly than ever, not in a church, not through the words of another, but in absolute silence, where there is no prayer, but only the dissolution between soul and the infinite. He began to see something strange. Stillness was not just refuge, but a weapon. While others reacted to fear, he learned to observe. While others clamored to be heard, he chose silence. And in that silence, another power gradually formed the power of mastery. One day, he met a stranger on the road. That person said something that struck pain, stirring old wounds. Before, he might have been angry, reacted, or walked away. But this time, he only looked into that person's eyes, quietly. Not out of fear, but because he knew he did not need to respond. Anger wanted to flare, but he observed it as one watches a cloud drifting across the sky. Within seconds, it dissolved. In that moment, he understood. True freedom begins when no one can control your emotions. The world will always challenge you, push you into the fire to see how you burn. But when you stand firm, when not one insult, one wound can sway you, you become invisible to the darkness. From then on, he walked differently. Every person he met, every unexpected situation became a new test. Some provoked purposely, Some tried to draw him into pointless arguments, but he simply smiled. Not a smile of arrogance, but the smile of one who knows the real battle is never outside. Another night, stopping at the edge of the forest, he sat and gazed skyward. The wind carried moisture and the scent of decaying leaves. Moonlight shimmered on the water. He saw his reflection clearly calm, no longer trembling. In that moment, he realized loneliness had become the greatest teacher. Not everyone can endure it, but whoever remains with it will emerge, changed. And in that moment, a cold wind blew through. He looked up. Against the dark sky, 3 small streaks of light flickered, then vanished. He knew it was not random. Warmth coursed through him, like a hand gently touching his shoulder. He understood the first seal had arrived. He whispered inwardly, 1, 1, 1. 3 numbers etched in light, floating in the air, then dissolving into void. 111, not an ordinary number. He felt it with its own pulse, like a cipher of heaven. A wave of knowing rose not through thought, but simple awareness. 111 is a promise of beginning, of a gate opening among souls ready. It is a sign that loneliness is no longer darkness, but the threshold of rebirth. He smiled in the darkness, his heart no longer heavy. He understood that if someone hears this story and also sees 111 somewhere on a clock, a license plate, in a dream, perhaps they too are being called. Just as he was, the wind passed by, causing the small flame to flicker. He drew his old notebook from his pocket and wrote a few trembling lines. When pressure rises, I still stand. When the world tries to break me, I will not break. When they expect me to react, I remain silent. This silence is not weakness, but power. He looked to the sky, whispered, Lord, if this is your forging, I accept. Even if fire consumes, I will stand until I become what you desire. A distant thunder sounded, then faded. Rain did not come, but the air around him thickened, as though earth and sky were listening. He felt a region of light growing within him, warm, steady, immovable. A strength not loud, but enduring like a rock in a river. That night, he slept beneath a sky full of stars. No blanket, no shelter. The wind was cold, but his heart was warm. He dreamed he stood in a desert, surrounded only by sand and wind. Before him stood a giant mirror. He looked into it and saw not only his face, but anger, fear, wounds, all like dark shadows drifting out of him, dissolving into the void. When he awoke, he knew the fire had done its work. Morning came. He walked out of the forest, carrying only a light backpack. Sunlight filtered through leaves, falling like golden shards. Each footstep was affirmation. He had stepped into a new phase of the journey. No longer someone pushed by loneliness, but someone who chose to stay within it to be refined. In the distance lay a small town with voices, vehicles, life. He knew he would pass through it, meet people again, face new tests, those trying his newfound calm. But this time, he was no longer afraid. He had understood what all the chosen must learn sooner or later. The outer world is but a reflection of the inner world. He walked on, back straight, eyes far ahead. In his mind, that phrase echoed as a promise. I will be with you through every storm. Sunlight glinted on his hair, the earth soft beneath his feet. Each breath was a silent prayer. He did not know what the future would bring, but he knew this: the gate had opened, the journey had begun, and the silence within was now the power that would hold him steady through all change. The morning breeze brushed his neck, bearing the scent of fresh pine. Above, white clouds formed spirals, like arms embracing the sky. He smiled. A new chapter had begun, and deep in his heart, he felt it like a drumbeat echoing across a desert. It is time to walk deeper into the light no one yet dares to tread. The little town emerged beyond the forest line, quiet as a dream still dusted with dew. Houses stood close together, metal roofs reflecting the early Sunday. People moved slowly, carrying tiredness in their posture, the ordinary burdens of life. He walked into that stream of humanity, silent as a stranger who has just returned from another realm. No one noticed him, yet something in his eyes made passing glances stop, though no one understood why. He sensed the difference immediately, not in them, but in himself. Even when standing among the crowd, he still heard his breathing, the beat of his heart. The silence he once feared had become the steady music behind every movement. He passed through the market, overhearing vendors argue, hearing children laugh, observing fleeting glances exchanged, then avoided. A strange thing happened. In each moment, he began to see through the surface. Each face, each smile, each word layers, peeled back to reveal something truer beneath. A man with a hearty laugh had weary eyes. A woman speaking softly had trembling hands as she took money. These were things he would never have noticed before. Now they were clear, written in light. He stopped at a small cafe. The server greeted him with a forced smile. As she turned away, he saw in her dim eyes a deep pain, some loss still raw, perhaps long ago, unhealed. Without asking or knowing, he felt his heart soften. He realized he had been given another gift, the ability to see what others hide. He sipped his bitter coffee, gazing through the window. The world looked like a grand stage where everyone played roles, joyful, strong, confident, content. But behind those masks, he saw fear, anxiety, weariness souls, longing to be seen truly. A memory came to him, something he had heard as a child, and now it rang in his mind as affirmation. The eyes of the righteous look into adversity. The ears of the righteous listen for the cry. Proverbs 15:29. That phrase felt like a key unlocking a new level of awareness. He understood that seeing was not with eyes but with the soul. The real eye lies within, and when it opens, the world is no longer an illusion. From that day, he wandered in silence, spoke little, only observed. He heard people say, "I'm fine," but saw tears behind eyelids. He heard, "Everything is okay," yet their voices trembled at the end. He saw that behind false words, there was not malice, but fear of being judged. People hide pain because they fear more hurt. He understood, and instead of scorn, his heart grew gentle. The more he saw, the quieter he became. He no longer needed to prove anything, no longer wished to challenge anyone. He just listened, watched, and let truth speak. Because he knew when others lie, they are not deceiving him. They are trying to believe they are okay. One afternoon, he sat in a park. A child fell while playing. The father rushed over, voice sharp. "Didn't I tell you not to run so fast?" But when he looked into the father's eyes, he saw not anger, but fear. Fear that the child might hurt. Behind the scolding lay love unskilled in speech. He understood. Every action, every reaction is an echo of a deeper emotion, sometimes love distorted by fear. As evening came, he walked along a deserted path, his heart full of reflection. Was this the gift of loneliness? When a person dares to face their own darkness, their eyes grow so bright they can see the darkness in others without judgment. On the path, the wind stirred the scent of rain. He stopped by an old wall, touched the moss growing on it. Suddenly, a voice whispered in his mind, "Do not fear to see. To see is to love. To see is to heal." He smiled, eyes moist. Perhaps that was how God spoke to him, not with thunder or miracles, but with quiet intuition like a breeze. That night, he wrote in his notebook, "To see clearly is a blessing, but also a burden. Once you see, you cannot pretend you do not. You must live true." He closed the notebook, looked up at the sky outside the window. The wind blew, clouds drifted, and in his heart, he heard the question, "What will I do with this gift?" The question made him think long. If he saw deception, should he expose it? Or should he remain silent and understand? He realized this power was not for judgment, but for compassion. When we see another's darkness, we also see the darkness within ourselves. In the silver moonlight, he saw his reflection in the glass, eyes deep and still. He whispered, "No one can truly hide from the light." A gentle wind passed. Outside, a few young people walked past, laughing loudly. One of them turned. Their eyes met his. For a moment, the girl's smile faded, replaced by surprise. Then she turned away. He knew she sensed something light in him, reflecting light in her. As the window closed, he exhaled, feeling both peace and weight. To see so much could be a blessing, but also a new loneliness, knowing what others are not ready to face. He understood why the chosen often walk alone, not because they want solitude, but because the light they carry unsettles others who are not yet ready. He closed his eyes, letting his mind drift with the wind. Then a thought passed gently, like a breath. Light only has meaning when shared. He opened his eyes and smiled. Perhaps all he sees, all the awareness he's gaining, is not meant to be kept. Maybe they are meant to be spoken, so that someone somewhere who is lonely will realize they are not insane, but awakening. He rose and stepped onto the porch, inhaled deeply the night air. The sky was dark, but not empty. It had the deep blue of the ocean. He looked upward and whispered, as though speaking to himself, but also to someone listening. If you feel this too, if you've heard that call in your heart, felt yourself different, stood in solitude, and yet remained steadfast, let your light shine. Share it. Spread it. Let the world know you are still here. His voice was soft yet firm, like a silent prayer. Then he smiled and added, gently and sincerely, and if what I say touches you, leave a sign. Like, share, or simply write a small word. Because when this light is shared, it multiplies and you will become a lamp for someone lost. He fell silent, listening to his heart's reply. It was not a call to a channel or a name, it was the invitation of the soul, calling the chosen to recognize one another through light. A wind gusted stronger, carrying wildgrass scent. He felt as though he stood on the border of two worlds, the old fading, the new forming. In that space, he sensed movement light, as the wings of an angel. Above, clouds spiraled toward a solitary point of light. He lifted his head, and for the first time he did not just see with physical eyes, he saw with the heart. Everything brightened. People, objects, sounds, all emanated their own energy. The world was no longer flat, but alive, like a breath. He realized he was witnessing the thinning veil between the visible and invisible. A sacred feeling spread. He touched his chest, feeling his heartbeat, not fear, but awareness. He was truly awake. He gently closed his eyes, and inside that darkness, a whisper of light kindled. Not blazing, but real. It spread, seeping into every corner of his soul. He smiled, tears falling not from sorrow, but from knowing. Eyes had opened, and would never close again. The wind softened. The night grew still. He sat there, breathing slowly, letting light flood his chest. And deep inside he knew, the journey is not finished, it has only just begun. For when the eye of the soul opens, the next step is not to see the world, but to see yourself in that world. The next morning, the sky was painted in a cold blue. The early wind carried moisture from distant hills, brushing across his face and rousing him in the quiet of dawn. Dew still clung to the grass, and the ground beneath him felt cool, like a giant hand supporting him. He sat up, inhaled deeply, and felt clearly. The world was no longer the same. Everything was brighter, clearer, not just in light, but in awareness. Every leaf, every breath of wind carried its own voice. He no longer saw nature as a silent backdrop, but as a symphony playing around him. There were tones, rhythms, invitations, and, astonishingly, he heard them not with his ears, but with a place inside him where silence becomes language. He sat by the stream in meditation, eyes half closed. The water flowed, and sunlight scattered silver fragments across its surface. His mind flowed too initially noisy, then calming, eventually so clear he could see himself within it. He saw each thought drifting by like little fish, some beautiful, some dark, but he no longer tried to grasp or banish them. He just watched. In that space he realized, the human mind is a river. If we resist it, we drown. If we let it travel, it finds its way to the sea. He once feared silence, thinking it an enemy. But now he understood it as the gateway. Every time you pass through it, a new layer of yourself is revealed. A layer without fear, reaction, or old wounds controlling you. Suddenly, the wind rose, ruffling the water's surface. He opened his eyes and watched his reflection fragmented by the breeze, then recombine. He smiled. That was his past mind, always swept by the winds of emotion, losing its form. Now it was different. He looked at the water, the waves, and saw himself still there, firm amid chaos. A phrase echoed in his mind, origin unknown. A quick-tempered person does foolish things, and the one who devises evil schemes is hated. Proverbs 14:29. He repeated it in silence, word by word, like breathing. Calm is not avoidance. Calm is silent strength, like water soft, but capable of cutting stone. He remembered times when a harsh word or a glance would throw his heart into upheaval. He handed over control of his inner world to the outer. Now he saw those things as small as drifting dust. When the mind is forged in silence, no one can touch it again. At midday, he sat on a hilltop, gazing into the valley below. The world's people looked like ants moving among rooftops. A sudden insight came. People do not live in the real world. They live in the world their mind constructs. If their minds are tangled, their world is chaotic. If their minds are luminous, their world becomes transparent. He placed a hand over his chest. His heart beat with steady rhythm, a distant drum. Each beat a reminder. Master yourself before seeking to master anything else. He knew. This is the weapon of the chosen. As afternoon waned, he sensed something unusual. All around him, things slowed. While others hurried, he stood still. While they argued, he remained silent. While they were disturbed, he just observed. And from that still point, answers gradually emerged, not because he forced them, but because they came. He understood this was the power of the mind blade. Not a blade to attack, but one that slices through the fog of chaos. Such a mind is no longer disturbed by emotion, not blinded by the crowd. It sees straight, clearly, accurately. That night, sitting by fire, he tested his silence. He imagined someone insulting him, betraying him, stealing what he held dear. He allowed the image to pass, observing his reaction. His heart raced slightly, then slowed. A wave of energy rose, not anger, but power. He did not extinguish emotion. He transformed it. He recalled the lesson from the fire before. When the fire burns, don't flee. Stay until it transforms you into light. And in that moment he saw, every storm is really testing whether our mind is steady. If the mind is steady, the storm is nothing but wind. The night wind blew, tilting the fire's flame. He looked into it and saw his reflection, a light in the darkness, soft but undying. He smiled, peace pouring into him. Then from somewhere beyond, a flash of light streaked across the night sky. 3 parallel beams ran across the sky, then vanished. He knew it was no coincidence. Deep inside him, clarity rose 222. 3 numbers matched the rhythm of his heart. He closed his eyes, letting them imprint on his soul. He understood immediately. 222 is more than a number. It is a seal of harmony. Balance has come between light and darkness, between action and stillness, between man and God. He was no longer alone. An unseen order walked with him. He smiled, writing in his notebook, 222. The mark of harmony. As I stand firm in myself, the universe realigns to support me. A gentle breeze stirred, blowing embers into the air like thousands of tiny stars. He knew he was not alone. Other souls in distant places were also seeing these signs, learning to stand in the eye of storms without being swept away. He looked skyward, stars silent witnesses above. A gentle voice rose from within. Remember, you do not walk alone. When you enter stillness, I am there. When you maintain balance between earth and heaven, I open the way for you. Warmth spread through his body, like an invisible hand touching his shoulder. He nodded quietly, giving thanks. No words, no ritual, just the knowing, a deeper knowing beyond all speech. He lingered, listening to his breath merge with the wind. Each breath a pulse between eternity and now. He understood that true power does not come from possession, but from mastery. When the night was utterly still, he rose, extinguished the fire, watching embers fade. Nothing left to hold, nothing left to fear. Everything returned to its rightful place, within and without. Light and dark, motion and stillness. He turned and walked down the small path leading out of the hill. Moonlight lit his way, winding through trees and ancient stones. Every footstep whispered, merging with insect songs as a farewell tune. He knew the road ahead would lead him deeper into places where darkness is no longer enemy but lesson, where silence is not trial but God's language. He walked, not turning back, his shadow blending into the night, only his breath and the wind following behind. In his heart, 222 still echoed as a silent prayer. Balanced, steadfast, and never alone. Above, the stars remained silent witnesses. One cycle closed, and another opened a place where the mind is not just tool, but guiding light. And in that light, he stepped onward softly, firmly, and awake, like one walking in the dream of God himself. The early wind drifted through the leaves like invisible fingers brushing his skin. The path ahead led him into a narrow valley where dawn's mist hung thick, hazy like the breath of souls drifting between two worlds. The distant murmur of a stream sounded like the earth's own breath, slow and deep flowing with the silent rhythms of life. He walked in that stillness, no longer striving to understand, no need to explain. Everything around him was no longer for analysis, but for sensing. Turning a bend, he stopped. A small house hid behind a row of trees, its roof moss-covered, a thin smokestack sending wisps of smoke skyward. He walked closer. The door was unlocked. He knocked gently. No answer. Only the cry of a cat from inside. Then silence. The house was empty, but something about it made him want to stay. He stepped in, letting the outside wind close the door behind him. The quiet was so intense he could hear his heartbeat. On a wooden table lay an old mirror, blurred by years. He approached and gazed in. In the glass, his face was reflected, but those eyes were no longer the old ones, deeper, clearer, carrying something like a primal sorrow he had never named. He touched the mirror, cold. Then from deep within his chest, a strange emotion welled up. Not his alone. The sadness of countless people he had walked past, glimpsed, read, without speaking. It surged like waves, heavy, then dissolved into sparkling fragments of light. He knew his heart was opening. He bowed his head, hands gripping the edge of the table. Not with pain, but with fullness emotion flooding like a broken dam. He saw the face of the cafe woman from before, the father who scolded his child out of fear, the boy lost in the marketplace. All appeared like little mirrors reflecting humanity's shared sorrow. Then, as a whisper, he heard, "Rejoice with those who rejoice. Mourn with those who mourn." Romans 12:15. The verse echoed in his soul like a deep bell in the valley. He understood. Compassion is not a burden, but the language of a soul once shattered and now healed. Only those who pass through fire can recognize the burns in another. He sat silently, letting those emotions pass through him. Each pain he felt did not weaken him, but softened him, deepened him. Like earth after rain, not barren, but teeming with life, ready to nourish every seed. When he lifted his head, sunlight streamed through the window, casting a long beam onto the mirror. In that light, he saw his face blur, then shift into something else. Hundreds, thousands of faces interwoven, men and women, young and old, all part of one current. He realized, we are not separate. One person's sorrow echoes in another. When one cries, the world weeps. He whispered like a prayer. Teach me to see not only the wound, but the light that seeks way through it. The room warmed. A soft breeze slipped through a crack in the door, stirring the curtain. He knew someone was here. Not a person, but a presence. Perhaps the spirit of the house, or simply God breathing through the wind. He did not need to know. He just sat, heart full of gratitude. Now, all the people he had ever met returned in memory as silent teachers. The one who betrayed taught him forgiveness. The one who hurt him taught him unconditional love. The one who left taught him that love is not possession. He saw clearly that none of his pains were meaningless. They were lessons written in blood and tears, forging a heart that senses rather than judges. He stepped outside, the golden light bathing the grass. Birds flew by, uttering short notes. The world felt gentle. In him was something like tenderness, but not weakness. The power of understanding. He walked along the narrow path by the stream. The water glinted, reflecting cloud and sky. Each ripple was a mirror to his soul when stirred. The water dark. When still, it grew clear. He wondered, do I see deeply in others because I have learned to look deeply within myself? The wind answered in the rustle of leaves. He understood. Around noon, he passed an elderly man beneath a tree, his eyes distant. He greeted him. The old man nodded but said nothing. As he turned to leave, the man asked softly, "Do you hear them?" "Who?" he asked. The old man smiled, pointing skyward. "Those who call us in silence." He looked up and saw clouds drifting in stripes, like words written in pale light. No one else might hear, but in his heart, the voice was clear. Use your heart to hear, for the ears only catch noise. The old man smiled gently, eyes like a clear spring. "You hear already," he said, then walked away through the trees. He stood there, overflowing with wonder. He knew this meeting was not coincidence. In the afternoon, dark clouds drew near, promising rain. He took shelter beneath a stone canopy, watching the first drops fall on the stream, sending out widening rings. Each drop was like a heart's cry falling onto earth, blossoming into waves of emotion beyond sight. He realized human hearts are like water. Each ripple touches other hearts. Though it goes unseen, he closed his eyes, letting the rain fall on his face, cold and gentle. Rain dissolves every boundary. In its midst, he felt millions of souls weeping, and millions being cleansed. His emotions surged like an ocean, no longer separating self and other. A flash of lightning lit his face, wet but calm. He smiled, the smile of one finally understanding. Pain is not enemy of light, it is the path toward it. When the rain ceased, he stepped out. The sky cleared, and high above a rainbow arched so vivid he had to squint. The colors blended seamlessly as reminder. There is no divide between light and dark, only transformation. He stood drenched, but inside he felt warm. Again, he knew he was not alone. Something or someone walked with him, guiding him through each layer of understanding, from intellect to feeling, from reason to compassion. He whispered his promise. If there is someone listening, know that I will not close this heart, though I must feel the whole world. The breeze responded in a whisper of assent. He looked at the rainbow one last time, then walked on. The road ahead plunged into mountains, shrouded in thick clouds. He knew what awaited was not outside, but within, where compassion will be tested by darkness. Step by step he walked, vapors swirling around his feet like smoke. Inside, emotions still rose, but they no longer roiled. They merged into a soft current of energy that filled his body, making him feel as though he held all suffering in his arm. He understood. Once a heart is opened, it cannot close. True mercy no longer belongs to the individual. It is the universe's pulse. The beat, the chosen here, most clearly. The sun sank, staining the sky deep red. He kept walking, light ahead fading into mist. But inside him, a quiet flame kindled the flame of unconditional love. He knew, tonight, his heart would guide him not by reason, but by the gentle light of compassion. The night fell like a thick curtain over the world. No moon appeared, only faint light from scattered stars overhead, like silent souls watching from afar. He kindled a fire and sat at the rocky edge, looking down into the deep valley. From here, the town was nothing but tiny dots of light each lamp. A life, a heartbeat, a soul sleeping or dreaming. He sat in silence, the warmth of the fire touching his face. The wind carried the scents of night damp earth, faint smoke, distant mountain grass. He sensed more clearly than ever the flow of time. It drifted without sound, slipping between breaths, thoughts, and the subtlest motions of the universe. People rarely hear time's voice because they talk too much, run too fast. But now, in the night silence of the mountain, he heard it like God's heartbeat. He recalled earlier days when time was just numbers on a clock. He rushed, lived as if chased by something vague. Success, recognition, love. He feared wasting time, but now he understood. Only when we stop do we truly touch it. The fire crackled, embers rising, then fading in the wind. Each ember was like a day that had passed in his life, burning bright, then extinguished. And he realized, if we know how, we can turn each ember into gold. Not by hands, but by awareness. He opened his old journal and wrote, "Ordinary people chase time. The chosen forge it into strength. Time takes nothing. It only returns to us what we sow in it." He paused his pen. An ancient verse rose in his mind, like a stream passing through rock. "Redeem the time, because the days are evil." Ephesians 5:16. He whispered each word, feeling its gravity. Redeem the time. Not racing it, but rescuing it, making it sacred. Every hour, every minute can be prison or temple, depending how we live within it. He looked up at the sky. The stars moved slowly, but with certainty. None hurried, none were late. He smiled. The universe knows time better than any. Everything has its own rhythm, and he was beginning to find his. The next morning, he left the hill and entered a vast plain. No one was there, just wind and grass. With each step, he felt as though he traversed a tier of himself. In each tier, time flowed differently, now long, now short, sometimes paused entirely. There were moments he could not tell past from present, only that all things were happening together. He stopped in the meadow, closed his eyes. Wind caressed his hair. The grass whispered below. All merged. He felt himself dissolving into that rhythm, no longer a separate being, but part of a greater movement. In that moment, he understood, time is the breath of the soul. If we resist it, we suffocate. If we breathe with it, we merge into life. He opened his eyes. The sun's light blazed. Before him, a stream curled like a silver thread. He bent down and drank cold, sweet. Lifting his gaze, he saw his reflection on the water, and right beside it, 3 numbers shining, as if etched in light. Senbai Sasho-san, he froze. This time, not just an intuition, but presence. A warm energy enveloped him, gentle yet vast. He did not fear. He knew this was another sacred seal, a sign of protection. His heart pounded not with anxiety, but with wonder. He sensed in the wind a whisper, not in words, but direct knowing. 333. When you walk alone, the heavens walk with you. He nodded. A tear of warmth rolled down his face, into the stream, merging with its flow. He knew he was no longer alone. Some things the eyes cannot see, but the heart can sense. He murmured, "Thank you. I know no moment is empty, for every moment is filled by the divine." The sky responded with distant thunder, soft as a drumbeat. The wind shifted, swirling around him, like an invisible hand's embrace. He felt safe, like a child in the arms of a father. From that moment on, he devoted daily time to doing nothing, just sitting, breathing, and sensing time passing through him. He called it training in silence. At first, his mind still struggled, wanted to think or plan, but gradually those noises dissolved. Only stillness remained. And in that stillness, he began to hear time's pulse, not a tick, but the sound of living. Each breath, a lifetime. Each second, a being born and passing. Time takes nothing, it transforms. He began a practice. In the early morning, when the sun first peaks, he would sit with eyes closed, counting each breath as a prayer of thanks for the new day, for time, for existence. When he reached 333, he would pause and smile. That is the seal of his guardian angels, a reminder that every moment is guided. He realized, when you cherish every instant, time becomes flexible like water. You can stretch a second into a life, or compress an hour into a blink, depending on the depth of awareness. One evening, as the sun glowed red, he stood in a field of wildflowers. Sunlight made it blaze as flame. Standing among them, wind blowing, he burst into a laugh, echoing through space. Free, true, immense. He understood. Time is not the enemy. It is the teacher of patience, the friend that teaches waiting and growing. Time does not make us age, it reveals who we become. As night fell, he returned to his camp. The fire was unlit, but his heart was luminous. He sat and wrote in his journal, "Time is sacred flame. He who knows how to hold it will use it to light his path." The chosen do not fear loneliness nor delay, for they understand every moment is a lesson from God. He looked up to the stars. Each sparkle reminded him that those stars may have died long ago, yet their light still travels. Time does not destroy, it carries onward. Sometimes what we think is lost still shines somewhere. He smiled, closed his journal. In his heart, he knew he had learned time's lesson, the lesson of trust. To believe that every event, great or small, has purpose, that every delay is reasoned in the universe, that no moment is wasted when the heart remains open. The night wind stirred the grass, whispering in agreement. He looked one last time at the sky and saw the 3 brightest stars aligned 333. He smiled, whispered, "I hear you." Then he lay down, back against the earth, eyes toward the heavens. Time was no longer a river passing by, but the ocean he was swimming in. He did not resist it, nor try to hold it. He joined it. In that moment, all sound faded. No more day, no more night. Only one thing remained, absolute being. And in that being, he realized, the chosen do not just live in time, they become it. The night flowed softly like breath. A new cycle began. He knew when dawn returns, time will no longer pursue. It will walk alongside him. The dawn that morning unfolded like a revelation. Light did not burst in, but seeped gently, soft as golden cloth, draping the earth's shoulders. He opened his eyes, and his first sensation was not fatigue or alertness, but presence. Every cell in his body seemed awakened by a transparent current of energy. The morning breeze blew through, bending grass, dew falling like greetings from Mother Earth. He stood, inhaled deeply, and smiled. Something had shifted. He was no longer someone seeking, but someone living in what he had found. He walked eastward, toward the rising sun behind the mountains. Each ray touched his skin like a hand, warm but not scorching, powerful yet gentle. In that light he felt every heartbeat, every breath, each breath, a silent song of the soul. The world around him remained the same. Birds dunking into water, the trickle of a stream, leaves trembling in the wind. But now he did not see them with his eyes, but with his heart. All creation had a soul, and all spoke in a language beyond sound. He recognized that every creature lives in the same current, none above, none below. Humans, trees, stones, wind, water, all forms of a shared divine breath. Understanding this, he found he could neither harm nor judge, nor see another as enemy. He could only love. He sat by the stream, watching the water flow, thinking of the people who had passed through his life. How many faces, how many stories, how many pains and joys. They were all parts of him, fragments sent to teach him about himself. And now that he saw that, he no longer held resentment in his heart. Forgiveness blossomed soft as the first light. No effort needed, no reason required. Forgiveness was no longer an act, but the natural state of a soul made clear. He spoke softly, like a prayer. Thank you for coming. Thank you for leaving. Thank you for making me into who I am. The wind stirred, the water murmured, and he heard an answer not from a voice he recognized, but from within him. You have learned true love, unconditional love. Warmth passed through him, making him shiver gently. He knew this was the second test of the chosen. To love without possession, to give without return, to exist without needing to be understood. He rose and continued walking. The path ran along the mountainside and led into dense forest. Light filtered through leaves, forming thousands of slender golden ribbons stitching sky and earth. Each step was a low sound, each breath a sacred rhythm. In that forest, he heard his own voice in everything, every tree his lung, every droplet his breath. Then he stopped. Before him lay a small lake, still enough to reflect sky and clouds. He looked in and saw his face calm, kind, luminous. There was no trace of the one who had suffered or feared, only the quiet light of the one who understood. He knelt, touched the water, and whispered, "Thank you for not leaving me in the darkness. Thank you for turning darkness into my teacher." The water rippled, then stilled. In its wave, he saw an image not his present self, but his past self. Trembling, lonely, full of doubt, that image looked at him, smiled slowly, then faded into the water. Tears fell not from sorrow, but from gratitude. He whispered, "I forgive you. Thank you for enduring on my behalf." And in that moment, all cracks in his soul seemed to mend. He felt himself become whole, no division between light and shadow, past and present, good and bad. All was one, held in love. Above him, a ray of sunlight pierced the canopy, falling straight upon where he knelt. The light was not intense, but warm. He closed his eyes, letting it soak into his being. In that light, he heard the whisper, "When you forgive yourself, I can flow through you." An infinite peace spread through him, not joy, not happiness, but the sacred silence of a soul united with the divine. He stood and walked forward through the forest. The light moved with him, inseparable. Now every place he entered grew brighter, not by the sun, but by the energy he radiated. He no longer needed words, just presence. And birds and branches, dear by the stream, seemed to understand. They approached. Unafraid, he sat down, placed a hand on the earth, and felt the planet's slow pulse. He understood. He was no longer a lone traveler. He was part of everything, and everything part of him. Night fell, and he lit a fire at the forest's edge. The flames flickered orange over his face. He thought of all those walking a path like his souls in darkness, seeking to rediscover light. He sent a silent prayer into the wind. May they also see this light, and know they are loved even before they believe it. The fire glowed, the wind whispered, the sky was deep black. He felt love spread like water, flowing endlessly without need of response. In that love, he realized he was no longer one seeking. He had become a torch for others to find their way. After a while, He opened his journal and wrote slowly, "When we forgive, we open the door for light to pass through. When we love unconditionally, we become that light." He looked up at the sky and saw stars shining unusually bright. Among them, one star shone stronger, as if looking straight at him. In that moment he knew. Someone watched him not from above, but from deep within his heart. He whispered, "You're still here." A warm current flowed through him. He smiled a smile of one who has touched the deepest trust. Not trust in a religion, but trust in the sacred life that moves through all things. The night wind stirred, carrying a half-heard whisper. He couldn't hear it fully, but could sense its meaning. Continue walking, for love is a journey with no end. The fire dimmed, the light shifted to deep gold. He sat there, watching embers float up into the air. Each sparked like a prayer, a little soul returning to light. He knew he had passed a new threshold, the threshold of union, where the chosen no longer seek salvation only for themselves, but become channels of compassion. He closed his eyes and smiled. In the whispering wind and the warmth of dying fire, he heard his heartbeat blend with the heartbeat of the world, synchronized, steady, endless. No longer distance between him and life. No more questions, no more longing. Only love breathing through him like the breath of the universe. The dawn broke like a revelation. Light didn't rush in, it spread gently, soft as golden silk draped over the earth's shoulders. He opened his eyes, and his first feeling was not weariness or awakening, but pure presence. Each cell in his body seemed stirred by a clear current of energy. The early breeze flowed, bending grass, and dewdrops slipped down like greetings from Mother Earth. He stood, inhaled deeply, and smiled. Something had changed. Not that he was someone searching, but someone living in the truth he had found. He walked eastward toward the rising sun behind the peaks. Each ray touched his skin like a hand warm, not burning, strong, yet tender. In that light, he felt each heartbeat, each breath. Every breath was a silent hymn of the soul. The world around him remained, birds skimming the water, the murmur of a stream, leaves trembling in wind. But now he did not see these with his eyes, but with his heart. Everything had a soul, and all cooperated in a language beyond sound. He knew then that all creation flows in the same current, none higher, none lower. People, trees, stones, wind, water, different forms of a shared divine breath. With that understanding, he could neither harm, judge, nor call another an enemy. He could only love. He sat by the stream, watching water flow, thinking of everyone who had passed through his life. How many faces, how many stories, how many pains and joys. All of them were parts of him, fragments sent to teach him about himself. And now that he saw it, he no longer held bitterness. In his heart, forgiveness bloomed, fragile as first light. No effort, no reason needed. Forgiveness was no longer an act, but the natural state of a clarified soul. He whispered, as prayer, "Thank you for coming. Thank you for leaving. Thank you for making me who I am." The wind stirred, water murmured, and he heard an answer not in words, but in knowing. "You have learned true love, unconditional love." Warmth passed through him, causing a gentle shiver. He realized this was the second test of the chosen. To love without possessing, to give without needing return, to exist without needing to be understood. He rose and continued on. The path wound along the mountainside, entering dense forest. Light filtered through leaves, weaving thousands of slender golden threads connecting sky and earth. Each step weighed, each breath was sacred. In that forest, he heard his voice echoed in every tree, every dewdrop, every creature. Then he paused. Before him lay a small lake, as still as glass. He gazed into the water. His reflection, calm, kind, bright, held no trace of the one who once suffered or feared, only the quiet light of one who understands. He knelt, touched the water, and whispered, "Thank you for not abandoning me in darkness. Thank you for transforming darkness into my teacher." The water rippled and stilled. In its wave, he saw another his old self, trembling, lonely, doubtful. That image looked, smiled, and melted into the water's sheen. Tears came not from sorrow, but from gratitude. He whispered, "I forgive you. Thank you for enduring in my place." In that moment, every crack in his soul seemed to mend. He felt himself become whole. No divide between light and shadow, past and present, good and evil. All was one, held in love. Above him, a beam of sunlight broke through branches and landed on where he knelt. The light was warm, gentle. He closed his eyes, letting it infuse his being. In that glow came a whisper. When you forgive yourself, I may pass through you. Infinite peace spread within, not joy, not happiness, but sacred silence of a soul joined with the divine. He rose and walked through the forest. The light moved with him, inseparable. Everywhere he passed grew brighter not by sun, but by the energy he radiated. He no longer needed words, only presence. Birds and branches, deer at the stream seemed to sense it. They drew near. Unafraid, he sat, placing a hand on the earth, feeling its slow pulse. He understood. He was no longer a lone wanderer. He was part of everything, and everything part of him. Night came, and he built a fire at the forest's edge. The flames glowed orange on his face. He thought of souls on similar journeys, those inside darkness, seeking light. He sent a silent prayer into wind. May they too see this light, and know they are loved even before they believe. The fire glimmered, wind whispered, the sky deepened. He felt love spread like water, flowing endlessly without demand. In that love, he realized he no longer sought. He had become a lamp for others. Later, he opened his journal and wrote, "When we forgive, we open gates for light to pass. When we love unconditionally, we become the light itself." He looked up at the stars. Each spark reminded him stars may have died eons ago, yet their light still travels. Time does not extinguish, it sustains. Sometimes what seems lost still shines somewhere. He smiled, closed his journal. Deep in his heart, he knew he had learned the lesson of time. Trust. Trust that every event, small or large, bears meaning. Every delay holds purpose. No moment is wasted if heart remains open. The night wind stirred the grass, whispering a scent. He gazed skyward one last time and saw three brightest stars aligned. 333. He smiled and whispered, "I hear you." Then he lay down, back upon the earth, eyes toward the heavens. Time was no longer a river flowing past, but an ocean he swam within. He did not resist it or clasp it. He melted into it. In that moment, all sound faded. No more day, no more night. Only one thing remained, absolute being. And in that being, he realized, the chosen do not merely live in time, they become it. The night drifted softly like breath. A new cycle began. He knew when dawn arrives, time will not chase him. It will walk beside him. The afternoon waned. The last light of day stretched across the earth, golden and thin as breath. He walked barefoot along the dirt path, feeling every tremor of the ground beneath his skin. Everything around him seemed to slow, as though the world itself was listening to him, or better, listening to itself through him. He had traveled far, not just in space, but in consciousness. From seeker, he had become transmitter. He no longer asked the universe, but the universe began to ask him, "What will you do with this light?" That question followed him down into the valley. It demanded no answer, but reminded him that every awakening carries a mission. Once given light, it must be shared. Below the hill lay a small village. The villagers were used to his figure, this silent stranger, who passed through and left the space around him lighter, brighter. When he paused by a well or in a market corner, people could not name why, but their hearts would calm. Nobody knew his name, but they called him the Quiet One. That afternoon, a young woman sat by the roadside, tears on her face. He approached, sat beside her, saying nothing. She glanced at him, tried to wipe the tears, then broke down in sobs, not from words of comfort, but because at last, someone was truly present. He stayed silent. In that silence, she poured out everything: fear, loss, loneliness. He listened with his entire being, his heart open. When she fell quiet, he spoke softly. "It's okay. All pain is teaching us to return." She looked at him, voice trembling. "Return to where? Return to where you always belong yourself." That was no philosophy, but truth. It rang like a bell in the valley. She said no more, only bowed her head. But in her tear-blurred eyes, he saw a small sparklight once planted. When he had touched his own lowest solitude, he smiled, rose, and departed. He knew sometimes a presence, a single silent look, can open a door someone forgot they held the key to. Evening fell, and he walked along rice fields. The smell of ripe grain drifted. pungent, yet comforting. The moon climbed behind a stand of bamboo, full, luminous, like a promise. Under its glow, he felt the invisible connection between himself and all things. No distance between listener and speaker, teacher and student, wounded and healer. All were roles in the same universal soul. A scripture echoed in him softly as a distant hymn. Delight yourself also in the Lord, and he shall give you the desires of your heart. Psalm 37:4. He understood. Delight comes not from achieving, but from knowing we are always embraced by him. When the soul aligns to God's rhythm, all desires become prayers already answered. He sat in the field, watching moonlight reflect on water. A gentle breeze stirred, causing ripples that mirrored lights like thousands of small eyes awakening. In that instant, he realized, every soul is waking. Some awaken through suffering, some through love, some through loss, but all trend toward the same point light. He drew his small notebook and scribbled, "Awakening is not the destination. It is the beginning of a promise. The chosen do not shine for themselves, but become mirrors for God's light to reflect." He looked upward. A star fell, leaving a long streak across the darkness. His heart trembled. He knew this was a sign, not just for him, but for all who hear this call in their hearts. He whispered, as softly as the wind, "The universe is stirring the chosen souls. They will know each other not by words, but by energy." He rose, facing the distance. Another small village lay ahead, lights flickering, people still shrouded in fear, waiting for a spark to pass. He felt it clearly. He understood. Light is not kept, it lives by being given. He walked. Night wind swept through his hair, carrying a strange warmth. On the path, he passed an old man holding a lantern, walking toward him. As they neared, the old man paused, looked deeply, and said, "You are not an ordinary man." He smiled kindly. "No one is ordinary, sir. Each person is a hidden piece of light." The man nodded, eyes bright. "True. But you light the rest of us?" He bowed. "No, sir. I only relight the flame already in each person." They stood in silence. Then the old man said, "Then guard that flame. For tonight the darkness will be deep." He smiled. The darker the night, the clearer the light. His words echoed in the night, carried on the wind like a small prophecy for those lost. When the old man disappeared, he continued. Moonlight cast a silver trail along the path. With every step he took, wind stirred, sense of earth, flame, souls reborn. He knew the light within him no longer belonged to him. It belonged to those who needed to see, to believe, to remember. They were never alone. Then, in his heart, 3 numbers appeared clear, radiant like a torch. 999. No voice, no omen, only absolute knowing. He knew. This was the sign of completion. 999. The number closing one cycle and opening another. The seal of an ending in light, not darkness. He pressed his hand to his heart, feeling its beat echo the number like invisible music. "So I have walked the full circle," he whispered. But he knew completion does not mean stopping. It is metamorphosis. A snake shedding skin does not die, it is reborn. He smiled, facing east toward the dim rising light. "Thank you," he said quietly. Perhaps to God, perhaps to the universe, perhaps to his own soul. "Thank you for letting me become." The wind answered softly, like an unseen touch. He felt a current run down his spine, not flame, but liquid light, gentle, warm, filling his whole being. He understood. The sacred lies not in preaching, but in presence. When the chosen pass through others' lives, they speak little, persuade less. They simply are, and that being changes the world. Above, the moon slowly dipped behind trees. He walked on, with no fixed destination. Each breath, each step, each glance became a living prayer. And in that stillness, he heard a whispered message, not only for him, but for all hearing this story, wherever and whenever they may be. If you feel called, if you see the numbers, if your heart trembles at these words, it is no coincidence. Share your light. Leave the number you resonate with, because each number is a doorway, and as you open it, you will know you too are chosen. The wind stirred, Earth and sky remained silent. A cycle closed. He paused in the field, closed his eyes, letting his being dissolve into the first light of dawn. And when the sun rose, he smiled. No more journey. Only light telling its own story. Through him, through you, through all. The final dawn of his journey arrived in absolute silence. The first light was no longer the warm gold he expected, but pure white, a light that seemed not merely to illuminate the outer world, but to shine deep into every soul ready to awaken. He stood in a vast field, mist curling around his ankles, a gentle breeze stirring his hair. All was still, so still he could hear the heartbeat of the earth merged with the beat within his chest. No boundary remained between himself and the world, between me and you. There was only one breath of life. He closed his eyes and listened. No calling, no lesson. For he understood, all lessons have returned to one truth: love. Love without condition, without reason, not reaching forward nor backward. Love like sunlight, touching all, even those dwell still in darkness. He opened his eyes. The sun appeared full and blazing. In that light, he saw silhouettes people he had met, souls who had passed by. Tears, laughter, all rose, circled him, merged with light, vanished. And in that moment, he heard a distant yet familiar voice. You have understood. Now bless the world as I have blessed you. He nodded not with his mind, but with his heart. From his chest, a beam of light welled, gentle, clear, yet powerful as a river cutting through mountains. That light expanded beyond his body, touching the sky, penetrating earth, dissolving in wind. There was no him there, only blessing radiating. Another scripture whispered in his soul, "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear?" Psalm 18:28. He did not recite it. He let it merge with his breath, become part of him. Words had become unnecessary. Light needed no interpretation. He sat, touching the earth. It felt soft, warm, moist, as though Mother Earth's hand was lifting him. He recognized, light is not only above, but in every grain of dust beneath his feet. God never left the earth, for he is earth, and the one who bows to the ground also touches him. A butterfly alighted on his shoulder, wings thin as silk. Shining in the Sunday, it did not flee. He watched and smiled. The butterfly is the symbol of transformation. He knew he had been like it. Once crawling low, then in solitude, wrapped in a cocoon, then dissolving to be reborn. And now the wings of his soul had unfolded. He whispered, I do not seek light anymore, for I have become the light I sought. Above, wind swept stronger, clouds swirling like a giant spiral. Light reflected in the sky in streaks, forming numbers. 3 numbers, clear, brilliant, 777. He smiled softly, tears slipping down, not earthly tears, but drops of soul. 777, the number of full awakening, the sacred seal of a soul opened. He understood. This was the final confirmation from the realm beyond. A circle closed, and a new divine cycle began. He wrote the final line in his old notebook. 777, the number of revelation. The soul has recognized its nature. Light is not distant. Light is me, and I am light. Wind lifted the pages, flipping each one. He knew the notebook no longer belonged to him. It was witness to the journey of all souls seeking the return. He stood, raised his hands, and let the wind carry the book away. Its pages flew skyward, spun in the sun, glowing like hundreds of little birds bearing blessings across the world. In that moment, he felt clearly that all had been completed. Nothing to hold, nothing to fear, nothing to seek. Only deep peace. He turned to the rising sun, arms wide. Light flooded, enveloped him, merging into every grain of dust, every gust of wind. There was no disappearance, only union. His soul did not leave its spread, entering every heartbeat of the world, becoming rain, sunlight, the whisper in the hearts of those awakening. And then, in silence, a gentle voice rang not from somewhere, but from everywhere. Blessed are those who have seen and still choose to love. Blessed are the awakened souls, for they will become lights guiding the way. He offered his final smile and vanished into the light. No silhouette left, no footsteps heard, only a soft glow resting on earth, like a blessing from heaven to the world. If you are hearing these words and your heart stirs, something in you rising, longing, remembering, that is the sign. The light is calling you. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. Know that you are never alone. The chosen always recognize each other by energy, not by name. And if you see 111, 222, 333, or 777 on your path, smile. It is a greeting from the cosmos, reminding you, you are on this path too. If this touches your soul, share it. Leave the number you feel resonating most. Because when you write it, you do more than confirm your calling. You open a door for another soul to recognize themselves. Live as light. Breathe as light. Let the world see that light has never left humanity. For in the end, there is only one message, one blessing, one truth. Love is everything. And so, the story closes. Not with a period, but with light still traveling. Grateful that you chose to spend these moments in the light of this story. If it touched your soul, please like, share, and subscribe, and ring the bell so the next whisper of light may find its way back to you.